The sheriff's unexpected daughter. A lawman discovers a frightened girl hiding in his barn. She claims he's her father, but he's never seen her before. Who left her there and why? The wind swept down from the mountains like a scythe, carving through the town of Bell Hollow with a bitter edge. Snow clung to the clapboard buildings and rattled the broken shutters of the abandoned rail station. The sky sagged with gray weight, as if it too had given up hope. Near the far edge of town, tucked behind the sheriff's barn, a little girl crouched in the hay, her fingers blue, her breath a trembling mist. She wore a faded dress 2 winters too small, and boots split at the seams. Her coat, if it could still be called that, hung from her shoulders like a molted skin, patches sewn with string and hope. In one pocket, she clutched a slip of parchment, folded and refolded until the edges curled like leaves. The other held nothing but a shriveled apple. She had not spoken in 2 days. Inside the house, Sheriff Elias Carr had just settled beside the fire. A cup of coffee steamed in his hands. The wind howled at the windows, but he was used to storms, both the kind that rattled glass and the kind that shattered men. After all, he buried a wife, held dying friends, and watched the town he swore to protect rot from the inside out. He wasn't expecting a knock. And yet there it was, soft, brittle, like twigs tapping. He stood, listened. Nothing. But something in him, a lawman's instinct, a widower's ache, urged him to check the barn. He shrugged on his coat, lit the lantern, and crossed the frozen yard, his boots crunching in the snow. When he opened the barn door, the light flickered across the straw. Then it landed on her. She didn't flinch, just stared back, wide-eyed and silent, like a deer too tired to run. Elias lowered the lantern slowly. "Well," he said, voice steady but low, "either you're the smallest cattle thief I ever met or you're lost." Still nothing. He crouched, careful not to startle her. "It's near freezing. You got no gloves. That apple looks more dead than alive. What are you doing out here, sweetheart?" That's when she stood, thin as a whisper. She took one shaky step forward and held out the parchment. He took it gently. By the lantern's glow, he read the note. It wasn't long. Just 9 words, scrawled in a woman's desperate hand. "This is your daughter. Her name is Lily May." Elias blinked. Then read it again. And again. "No," he muttered. "No, that." But she was still standing there, staring up at him. Cheeks hollow, lips cracked. He searched her face. Brown hair. Green eyes. Maybe 7 or 8. Could be anyone's child. Could be no one's. Could be his. He stood, heart thudding now with something he hadn't felt in years, fear. I never." He looked away, then back. "Who sent you?" She didn't answer. Just swayed slightly, like the cold had finally caught her. Elias reached out, hesitated, then scooped her into his arms. She weighed no more than a bundle of firewood. Back inside, he wrapped her in quilts, poured a cup of milk and stirred in honey. She sipped it slowly, eyes never leaving his face. He didn't ask again that night. Didn't press. Instead, he watched her fall asleep on the worn couch beside the hearth, one hand still clutching the note. The next morning, he sent word to the preacher, the schoolteacher, and old Mrs. McAllister, who knew everything about everyone for the past 30 years. No one knew a Lily May. No one had seen a girl matching her description. No one remembered a woman who might have written such a note. Then a week. She spoke very little, but she watched everything. Helped bring in firewood, set the table, laughed once when the goat sneezed on her. Sometimes he caught her staring at him with a strange mix of caution and hope, as if waiting for something to break. Then one night, as he tucked her into the spare room bed, she asked quietly, "Did you used to know a lady named Caroline?" The name hit him like a shot of winter wind. He hadn't heard it in over 9 years. Caroline Merton, the girl who danced barefoot in the creek one summer and left town before the leaves fell. He remembered her eyes, the same deep green now staring up at him. "I did," he said. "She was my mama." His legs felt weak. He sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Caroline. Sweet, wild, unreachable Caroline. She hadn't written in all those years. Hadn't sent word. He hadn't known she was ever with child, much less his. "I'm sorry," Lily said softly. "She died last week. She said you'd do right." She said it like a prayer more than a fact. Elias didn't know what to say. His hands were calloused. His heart scarred. He'd seen the world turn cruel. But here, now, in the hush of his home, was something he never expected. A second chance. He stood. "Sleep now," he said, voice tight. "We'll talk more in the morning." But he didn't sleep that night. Sat by the fire instead, the note resting in his palm, the flames dancing across his weathered face. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside, something long buried in him stirred. Hope, or maybe redemption. The morning after Lily's truth unwound itself in his quiet home, Elias Carr saddled his mare with shaking hands. The sky had lifted slightly, its slate-gray light spilling over the hills like cold milk. The storm had passed, but the land was still buried under a white hush that softened every sound. The only movement was smoke curling from chimneys and crows crying in the distance. Inside the cabin, Lily sat at the wooden table, legs swinging just above the floor. She wore one of his old flannel shirts, sleeves rolled 3 times, and a woolen scarf Mrs. McAllister had dropped off that morning. She hadn't said much since the night before, but she hadn't run either. "You ever been on a horse?" Elias asked gently, brushing snow from his hat. Lily shook her head, then whispered, "Mama said they're smart, but they know if you're scared." He offered a half-smile. "That's true enough." She looked up at him, lips chapped, fingers still wrapped tight around the cup of warm milk he'd poured her. There was something old in her eyes, something that shouldn't have lived in a child. "I need to head out to the ridge," he said. "Snow knocked down part of the fence line. Won't be gone long. You want to ride along or stay here with the fire?" She hesitated, looked at the fire, then back at him. "I'll go," she said softly. He didn't ask why. Didn't need to. The barn smelled of leather and hay, a familiar comfort. Elias lifted her into the saddle ahead of him, one arm steady around her as the mare moved slow and steady through the snow-dusted trees. Lily said nothing, but leaned back into him just enough to make him feel it. The smallest trust. "You don't have to talk," he said after a while. "But if you want to, I'll listen." She didn't answer, but her breathing grew deeper, calmer as they rode. The ridge was quiet, just a few posts snapped from the weight of snow. Elias worked with practiced ease, hammering in a brace while Lily crouched nearby, drawing shapes in the frost with a stick. "Did Mama know you'd stay here?" she asked suddenly. He looked up. Her voice wasn't accusing, just searching. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I didn't even know she'd come back through Wyoming." She said. Lily paused, then tried again. "She said you weren't bad, just afraid." Elias leaned against the post, hammer in hand. She wasn't wrong. Of what? He looked out over the valley. Of getting close. Of letting someone in and not being enough for them. Lily nodded like she understood. That broke something in him. She was too young to understand things like that. And yet she did. They rode back in silence, the mare's hooves thudding softly against the snow. Elias carried her inside, even though she protested she was too big. She was asleep before her head hit the pillow. That night, he sat with a tin plate of stew growing cold in front of him. She was his daughter. He didn't need a blood test, didn't need the preacher's opinion. He'd seen it in her eyes, felt it in her quiet resilience. She had Caroline's fire and his silence. The next morning, he set about making things right, or at least making things stable. She needed boots that fit, a coat that could keep out the wind, a brush for her hair and ribbons if she wanted them. He saddled the mare again, this time driving the wagon into town. "Town folks gonna stare," he warned her. "Not 'cause of you. Just 'cause they ain't seen me bring a child anywhere since." He let the sentence hang. Lily didn't ask what happened. She only said, "I don't mind stares. Mama said people only whisper when they're scared to speak." He chuckled under his breath. She always did talk like a preacher with a bottle in hand. At the general store, the bell above the door jingled as they stepped in. Miss Ruthie, the owner, glanced up, then did a double take. "Sheriff Carr, you've grown yourself a shadow." "She's my daughter," he said simply. "Name's Lily." There was a moment of stunned silence, then something softened in Ruthie's eyes. "Well," she said, bustling around the counter, "any girl smart enough to ride through a storm with a sheriff deserves the finest boots we've got." Lily didn't smile, but she stepped forward and tried on the first pair without flinching. By the time they left, the wagon was heavier with necessities and a few things Lily hadn't asked for but clearly needed. A doll with stitched eyes, a copy of Grimm's fairy tales, a peppermint stick wrapped in red cellophane. At home, she placed the doll gently on the windowsill, next to the only photograph in the house, Elias and his late wife, taken the year they married. "You loved her?" Lily asked. "Yes," he answered. "But she died." He nodded. "A long time ago. Do people stop loving when someone dies?" He looked at her, startled. "No," he said finally. "It just turns into something quieter." Lily touched the scarf around her neck. "That's what Mama said." Elias turned away, afraid the emotion might crack through. That night, she helped set the table. She peeled potatoes while he chopped wood. She fed the hens and brushed the old barn cat that never let anyone near. It followed her now like a shadow. And when he tucked her in, she whispered, "Thank you for the coat." He didn't say anything, just brushed a hand over her hair and stood in the doorway long after she'd fallen asleep. The house, once echoing with emptiness, now felt full. Not loud, not bright, just full. And as the wind pressed against the windows once more, Elias Carr sat by the fire, that wrinkled note still tucked in his Bible on the mantel. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, he had a daughter, and that was enough. The snow began to melt, slow and reluctant, as if the land itself was unsure whether it could trust the promise of spring. Ice cracked on rooftops. Chickens wandered further from the coop. And each morning, the sun climbed just a little higher behind the hills. Lily May woke to warmth. Not just the fire in the hearth or the quilt tucked up under her chin, but something gentler, something steady. She lay for a long time, listening. No shouting, no footsteps pacing, no door slamming shut, just the distant creak of floorboards and the soft clink of iron on the stove. She sat up and blinked around the room. It was still strange, still not hers, but there were signs. A small wooden comb lay on the nightstand. The coat from the general store hung on a peg beside the door. And on the windowsill, the doll Miss Ruthie had quietly slipped into her arms still sat facing the cold glass, guarding her dreams. She slid out from under the covers and tiptoed toward the kitchen. The smell of coffee met her first, strong, dark, and earthy. Then she saw him, Elias Carr, crouched by the stove, stirring something in a pan. His back was to her. The sleeves of his flannel shirt were rolled up, revealing sinewed arms corded with age and labor. She thought, not for the first time, that he didn't seem like a man who should be anyone's father. He moved too quietly, kept his eyes too steady. But he'd carried her through a snowstorm, let her sleep on his couch, bought her boots without asking if she'd pay him back. So maybe he didn't have to look like one. He glanced over his shoulder and spoke without turning. "Coffee's too strong for you. But there's porridge if you're brave." She stepped into the light. You always know when someone's behind you. When you wear a badge long enough, you learn not to be surprised. Lily slid onto the bench by the table. He placed a steaming bowl in front of her, then set a spoon down beside it like he was serving a guest at church. "You don't have to finish it," he said. "But I won't make eggs until that's gone." She took a bite. It wasn't bad. She took another. "You gonna go fix fences again today?" she asked, mouth full. "Probably. Storm did more damage than I thought. I can help." He raised a brow but didn't answer. Instead, he poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching her from the corner of his eye. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It just existed, like an unspoken agreement that they were figuring this out together. After breakfast, Lily followed him out into the yard. Snow still lingered in shady corners, but the path to the barn was dry. The animals greeted Elias like always, with low snorts and expectant eyes. But now they followed Lily too. She brushed the old mare with slow, careful strokes while Elias mended a cracked bucket nearby. "You ever had animals before?" he asked. "No. Mama said they were too much trouble. But I think she liked them. She cried once when a dog followed us and we couldn't keep it." He didn't press her for more. Didn't ask where she and her mother had gone or how they'd lived. He figured she'd speak when she was ready. And if she never was, that was her right. After chores, she wandered inside and started tidying without being asked. Wiped down the table, shook out the rug, straightened a crooked frame on the wall. Elias watched from the porch, hat low over his brow. He didn't know how to feel. He'd lived alone for nearly 10 years. Silence had been his companion, routine his religion. And now there was this little soul quietly mending his life with soft steps and wide eyes. He wasn't sure if he deserved it. That evening, as he walked in from the barn, he noticed a second place was set at the table. She looked up. "Did I do it right?" He nodded. "Looks fine." She smiled, not wide, not open, but enough to light something small in the room. They ate stew and cornbread. She asked if he'd ever arrested a real outlaw. He told her about the time he caught a pair of drunk ranch hands pretending to rob a bank with a pumpkin and a lasso. She giggled, covered her mouth like she wasn't supposed to. After dinner, she read from the grim book aloud while he smoked his pipe. Her voice was soft, uncertain at first, but it grew steadier with each line. When she reached the part where the prince kissed the sleeping maiden, she frowned. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "How would he know she wanted him to?" Elias chuckled. "Fairy tales don't ask. They just tell." "Well," she said, closing the book, "that's dumb." He didn't argue. Later, he placed fresh linens on her bed and left a hot brick wrapped in cloth at her feet to keep them warm. "There's no locks on your door," he said quietly. "Never will be." She didn't answer. But the next morning, he found the doll from the windowsill now sitting beside the Bible on the mantel. And in the doll's lap, folded carefully, was the note. He unfolded it again, though he'd memorized every word. "This is your daughter. Her name is Lily May." That night, when she thought he couldn't hear, Lily whispered into the dark, "Mama, I think he's trying." And Elias, sitting just outside her room with his back against the wall, closed his eyes. Because maybe he was. The days blurred gently into one another, quiet, ordinary days that unfolded like a forgotten lullaby. The kind of days Elias Carr hadn't known in years. Lily woke each morning with the first crack of light, moving softly through the house like she'd always been part of it. She folded blankets without being asked, checked the chicken coop on her own, and once, without a word, patched a tear in Elias's flannel sleeve while he was out chopping wood. He didn't know what to say when he saw the neat stitches. Just stood there on the porch, sleeve in hand, staring down at the little excess sewn with careful precision. She never mentioned it either. But still, things were changing. She was changing. Not all at once, and not in the way anyone might notice from the outside. But inside her, something long frozen had begun to thaw. Elias saw it in the way she hummed to herself while sweeping the floor, in how she paused sometimes to press her cheek against the barn cat, who now slept curled at her feet every night, and in the way she smiled, small and lopsided, when he brought her back licorice from the general store without saying a word. The walls that once made the cabin feel like a tomb were now warming, little by little. And yet, not everything softened. There were nights she still flinched in her sleep, nights she cried out, barely audible, and when Elias came to check, she'd pretend she hadn't. There were times she asked no questions when most children would have asked 10. Times she startled at the sound of boots on the porch, even when they were his. And Elias, though calm in his manner, solid in his silence, felt a deep unease begin to settle in his chest. She was still afraid, not of him, perhaps, but of something, or someone. It was a Thursday afternoon when he found the second note. He'd gone into her room to open the window. Spring had finally begun to break through the cold, and the cabin needed the fresh air. As he pulled the curtain aside, a folded scrap of paper slipped from beneath her pillow. He hesitated, then picked it up. The handwriting was different this time. Angrier, slanted and rough. "She belongs to me. Don't think you can keep her." No signature. No explanation. Just those words. Elias didn't remember sitting down, but there he was, jaw tight, fists clenched around the edges of the note. The room seemed suddenly colder, as if winter had returned without knocking. When Lily came in from feeding the hens, he was already sitting at the kitchen table, the note folded neatly beside him. She froze in the doorway. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said. "Who wrote it?" His voice was calm. Too calm. She looked away. "Lily," he said, softer now. "Please." She moved to the stove, busying herself with the kettle. "I don't know. Mama got letters sometimes. From a man she didn't like talking about. I think he followed us. Once in Helena, She made us sleep in a church pew just to stay hidden. Elias stood slowly, heart thudding. Did he ever hurt her? Hurt you? Her back remained to him. He yelled a lot, broke things, hit walls. Not me. Not until once. She swallowed hard, the kettle forgotten. That's why she brought me here, she whispered. She said she couldn't run anymore. Elias reached her then, laid a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch this time. You're safe now, he said. But what if he comes? Elias didn't answer right away. He walked to the mantel, opened the cabinet beneath it, and pulled out a small wooden box. From it, he retrieved a single silver star. He hadn't worn it in 3 years. Then he'll have to deal with the law, he said quietly, pinning the badge back on his chest. That night, Elias slept in the rocking chair by the fire, rifle within arm's reach. The house was quiet, the wind still, but his thoughts churned with memories. Of Caroline, of those last days before she vanished from Bell Hollow with nothing but a pack and a promise. He'd never known why she left, only that it had nearly hollowed him out. Now he wondered if she'd run from that same man. And if she had, why hadn't she told him? He looked across the room toward Lily's door, now ajar. Maybe she had tried. And maybe he hadn't been the kind of man she believed could protect them. The next morning, he saddled up early, left Lily with Mrs. McAllister, and rode into the county seat. He spent the day digging through old records, marriage licenses, complaints, reports, anything that might lead him to the man behind that note. By dusk, he had a name. Thomas Mercer. Arrested twice for public violence. Known gambler. Last known address. Helena. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make Elias grip the reins tighter on the ride home. He had faced rustlers, drunks, and murderers, but nothing rattled him quite like the idea of this little girl, his daughter, ever being taken from him. Not now. Not after all she'd survived to get here. He returned to the cabin, just as Lily was setting a lamp on the windowsill. She looked up when he came through the door. "Did you find something?" He set his hat on the peg and knelt before her. "I found enough." She studied him with those wide, knowing eyes. Then she reached up and touched the badge on his chest. "You're wearing it again." He nodded. "You gonna keep wearing it?" He placed his hand over hers. "For as long as I need to," he said. "For as long as you're mine to protect." And Lily, whose heart had learned too soon not to trust promises, let herself believe that one. If only for tonight. The air grew softer in the following weeks, as if the earth was learning how to breathe again. Winter receded slowly, stubborn in the shadows, but green shoots pushed up through the thawed ground, and birds returned to the trees with cautious songs. Lily May grew bolder with the season. She climbed fences now, carefully, always looking back to be sure Elias saw. She learned to crack eggs without spilling yolk and read aloud from her book every evening, with a voice more sure than before. Once, she even asked to help clean the rifle, just to learn. He showed her how, gentle and patient, then handed her a small pocket knife to keep. "Not a toy," he said. "I know," she answered. "I serious. Mama gave me one once." But he took it. Elias didn't ask who he was. He didn't have to. Instead, he told her how to sharpen it, how to fold it, how to tuck it safely in her coat. And when he caught her carving her name into a smooth piece of barnwood days later, just a small L at first, he didn't scold her. He just added a second mark beside it. E. L for Lily. E for Elias. No words passed between them. None were needed. But the quiet was interrupted not long after, when a stranger rode into Bell Hollow. It was just afternoon. Elias and Lily were hauling firewood, side by side. She was trying to lift more than her arms could hold, insisting she was strong enough. "You've got grit, I'll give you that," Elias said with a low chuckle. That's when the dust rose at the edge of town. Elias straightened, hand on his belt, eyes narrowing at the figure dismounting in front of a saloon. The man wore a wide hat pulled low and a long coat that trailed behind him like a shadow. Even from a distance, Elias could see the limp in his left leg and the strange tilt of his mouth, like he was always halfway to a sneer. He knew that face. And worse, he knew that gait. Thomas Mercer. Elias dropped the kindling and walked Lily quickly to the porch. "I want you to stay inside," he said. "No matter what." Her eyes met his. "Is it him?" He nodded. She didn't cry, didn't panic, She simply whispered, "Don't let him take me." "I won't," Elias said, kneeling to her level. "Not now. Not ever." Then he stood and walked into town. The saloon was half full as usual, but it emptied quickly when Elias stepped through the doors. The clink of glasses paused. Conversation died. Mercer turned from the bar, slow and lazy. "Well now," he said, "aren't you a hard man to find?" Elias didn't speak, just stepped forward, hands still at his sides, every inch of him coiled and calm. "You came for the girl," he said finally. "She's mine," Mercer answered with a half shrug. "Her mama and I, well, we had an understanding." "Your kind of understanding ends in bruises," Elias replied coldly. Mercer's smirk faltered. "I got rights. She's my blood. You think a badge lets you keep her?" "I think the girl doesn't flinch when I raise my voice," Elias said. "That's all the right I need." Mercer chuckled. "She'll come with me, sooner or later. You can't watch her forever." Elias stepped closer now. The room had gone still. "If you try," he said, voice like stone, "I'll put you in the ground. And I won't lose sleep." There was no shouting, no drawn gun, just the cold truth between two men who knew violence, one who lived by it, and one who had long tried to leave it behind. Mercer spat, flicked the dust from his coat, and backed out the door. But Elias knew he'd be back. That night, he cleaned every rifle in the house, checked every lock, boarded the windows without explanation. Lily helped, quiet and focused. When they were done, she curled up beside the fire while he read from her book, his deep voice slow and uneven, unfamiliar with the rhythm of fairy tales. "You skipped a page," she said sleepily. "I like this ending better." He didn't say it, but he meant it. He was writing a new ending, for her, for himself. And it didn't include a man like Mercer. The following day, Elias rode out early, following a hunch. There was an old Pinkerton agent in the next county, now working as a records clerk. They shared a bottle once, long ago, under a blood-red sunset after burying two men too young for coffins. By sunset, Elias returned with documents, Mercer's arrest record, a warrant for assault pending in Montana, and a signed letter from the county judge giving Elias legal guardianship, temporary but firm enough. It wasn't ironclad, but it was something. He handed Lily the papers that night. She ran her finger over the seal like it was a talisman. "Does this mean I get to stay?" "It means you're not alone," he said. She nodded slowly. Then, for the first time, she reached out and hugged him. Not stiffly, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to. He stood there, arms awkward around her small frame, heart tight in his chest. It had taken weeks, a mountain of silence, and one hard ride into the past, but she was starting to believe it, that this place, this home, might be hers, that this man, with his weathered hands and quiet voice, might be what a father was supposed to feel like. Bell Hollow was too small to keep secrets, but somehow Elias had managed it for years, burying pieces of his past under duty, under silence, under the badge he wore like a second skin. But the past has a way of clawing back when you least expect it. It came not with gunshots, but with a telegram. Sheriff Elias Harrow received it on a gray morning while Lily May was feeding the chickens. He read the single line twice, then folded it and tucked it into his pocket like it might disappear if kept close enough. Mercer spotted northbound. 2 riders. Armed. He didn't tell her. Not that day. Maybe not ever, if he could help it. Instead, he saddled his horse and made rounds twice as wide as usual. Checked fences that didn't need checking. Sat longer on the porch, one hand always near his hip. But Lily noticed. She always did. "You're walking like your boots are heavier," she said one afternoon. He looked up from oiling the rifle. "What do you mean?" "You're worried." He considered lying, then remembered she'd seen too many lies already. "There might be trouble," he said. "The kind that follows you when you think you're done with it." She was quiet. Then, "Is it about me?" "No," he said softly. Then again, firmer. "Not just—" And that was the truth. Because Thomas Mercer wasn't coming just for Lily. He was coming for Elias, too. That night, the sky cracked open with a hard spring thunderstorm. Rain lashed the windows, and wind howled down the chimney. Elias sat awake, boots on, rifle leaning against the wall. Lily padded out from her room, blanket over her shoulders, hair loose around her face. "Storm woke me," she whispered. He nodded. "It's an angry one." She climbed onto the chair across from him, legs tucked under her. "Did you ever do anything bad?" she asked suddenly. "Before you were sheriff?" Elias took a long breath. "I've made mistakes," he said. "Some I take back. Some I wouldn't." She didn't press, just looked at the fire, as if the flames could explain what he couldn't say. He thought about the war, about the things men did when they thought justice was the same as vengeance, about the boy he once let bleed out because his hands were shaking too hard to tie a bandage. "I did things to survive," he said finally. Lily's voice was barely audible. "Me too." And with that, they understood each other better than any oath or blood test ever could. By week's end, the storm had passed, but the tension hadn't. News came by way of Father Jeb, who stopped by on a borrowed mule. A man matching Mercer's description had been seen camping 2 miles out, near Widow's Bluff. With him, a younger man, fast with a revolver. No name, but hungry eyes and a quick temper. Elias nodded, thanked Jeb, and sent Lily inside before saying the next part. "They're waiting for something," the preacher said. "Or someone. I know what. You'll face them alone." Elias didn't answer, but he already had a plan. That evening, he opened the cedar chest at the foot of his bed. Inside was a coat he hadn't worn in 10 years, a black duster with worn cuffs and blood stains he hadn't been able to wash out. Beside it lay an envelope with his will, a gold pocket watch, and a single letter addressed to her. He packed all 3. Then, while Lily read by lantern light, he knelt beside her. "If something happens, if I don't come back by sunrise, I want you to ride to the church. Father Jeb will know what to do." She stared at him. "You're going out there?" "I am." "You don't have to fight." "No," he said. "But I do have to finish this." Her voice cracked. "You promised you'd keep me safe. And I will, even if it means not coming back." She was silent for a long time. Then she stood, walked over, and slipped something into his hand. It was the pocket knife he'd given her. "Bring it back," she said. "I will." He kissed her forehead, grabbed his rifle, and stepped into the night. At Widow's Bluff, the wind was sharp, and the moon lit the stones like ghosts. Elias approached slow, rifle slung, coat open, hands visible. Mercer stood by the fire. The younger man beside him flicked a match, cigarette in his mouth. "Well, well," Mercer sneered. "The lawman shows. You're trespassing. And you're out of time," the younger one hissed, drawing fast. But Elias was faster. One shot, one scream. The young man dropped like a stone, clutching his leg. Not dead, just done. Mercer staggered back. "You son of a—" Elias raised his rifle again. "You don't get to say her name," he said. Mercer's hand hovered near his holster. Elias didn't flinch. "This is your last chance," Elias said, voice low. "You turn around. You ride out. You disappear." Mercer laughed bitterly. "She's mine." "No, she's hers." And then the second shot rang out. But not from Elias. It came from behind. From the trees. From Lily. She stepped out, hands shaking, the small pistol from Elias's drawer gripped tight. Mercer's hat flew off. The bullet had missed, barely. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, tears streaking her cheeks. "Not anymore." Mercer looked from her to Elias, and for the first time looked afraid. Elias stepped forward, rifle still raised. "She stays with me," he said. "She stays free." Mercer, beaten by silence, turned and left, dragging his injured partner behind him like a curse unraveling in the dirt. Back at the cabin, Elias said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, he looked at Lily and said, "You disobeyed me." "I did," she whispered. "Saved my life." She nodded. Then Elias did something he hadn't done in decades. He laughed. A short, broken thing, but real. She smiled, too. Then yawned, and he carried her inside. That night, she slept without nightmares. And he sat beside her bed, finally at peace with the ghosts outside. By the time spring broke fully over Bell Hollow, the lilacs were blooming outside the sheriff's cabin, and Lily May had taken to humming while she swept the porch, something Elias never thought he'd miss until it became part of his mornings. Trouble hadn't returned since Widow's Bluff. Word spread that Thomas Mercer had limped out of the territory with a bullet hole in pride and leg both. No one dared offer him shelter again. As for the younger gun hand, he was now a preacher's apprentice in the southern county, missing 2 fingers and full of stories about the girl who shot the devil in the face. Elias didn't correct them. He let the legend grow. Lily started school at the church hall, though she still claimed books were only good for pressing flowers and hiding candy. She helped old Widow Cartwright with her garden, read bedtime stories to children at the orphanage, and once knocked down the mayor's boy for calling her a bastard. She used the back of her hand, Elias told Father Jeb afterward, shaking his head but smiling. She learns from the best, the priest replied. Elias never said it out loud, but Lily May was his. Not by blood, not by law, but by every choice, every meal cooked together, every shared silence that meant more than words ever could. One evening, while the horizon was painted gold and the sky whispered the promise of rain, Lily came to Elias with something clenched in her fist. A folded paper, old, frayed, stained in the corners. She held it out. "I think I'm ready," she said. He opened it. It was the letter from her mother. "My dearest girl, if this reaches you, I am gone. I pray the man who holds this has kept my word, that he protected you, taught you to ride, to trust, to speak your mind, that he was better to you than your real father ever was to me. His name is Elias Harrow. I once hated him. Then I forgave him. Then, I think, I loved him, in the quiet, sad way people do when the timing is all wrong. He is not your father, not by blood, but he is the best man I ever knew. Let him teach you how to live brave. Love always. M." Elias folded the letter back slowly, carefully, as if handling a ghost. He didn't speak for a long while. Then Lily said softly, "I already knew." "You did?" She nodded. "Doesn't change anything. You're still my family." His throat tightened. He looked away, but Lily walked over and placed something else in his hand. It was the gold pocket watch from the war. "I think it's time," she said. "You let go of the old way." That Sunday, Elias wore a clean shirt and his boots were polished. At church, the town watched in silence as he walked Lily May down the aisle, not for a wedding, but for her confirmation ceremony. She stood proud, chin high, eyes clear. When Father Jeb asked if she had anyone to speak on her behalf, she looked to Elias. He stepped forward. "I don't know how to raise a daughter," he said. "I only know how to keep trying. But if she'll have me, I'll spend the rest of my life learning." Lily's answer was a quiet tear and a nod. The congregation clapped, and someone in the back, maybe old Hank, shouted, "About time, Sheriff." Years later, folks would say Bell Hollow changed after that. That kids stopped throwing rocks at the church. That the saloon started closing early on Sundays. That Sheriff Harrow never missed a school recital or town hall meeting again. And that Lily May Harrow, the girl with a dead outlaw for a father and a sheriff for a second chance, grew into the kind of woman who healed broken things just by being near them. She never left Bell Hollow. She didn't need to. She'd already found home.